everybody, it's low carb and keto nutritionist Amy Berger here. Welcome to this live video courtesy of Adapt Your Life. And I will just wait about a minute or two and hopefully we'll see some more people join and then I will get into the topic. And I do have to apologize a little bit. We said there was going to be Q&A. I was told that is not in the cards. That is my error, my apologies. But you know, Adapt Your Life will have plenty more live videos coming your way. And on my own YouTube channel, the name is 2it Nutrition. I'll be doing more live. So we will have time for plenty of Q&A in the future. But tonight, I don't think there'll be any Q&A. All right, hello everybody. I see some people joining. All right, 71 people watching. I'll wait another couple of seconds and then I'll just get into it. Hello from Montclair, New Jersey. I was born and raised in Staten Island, just across the bridge, and most of my family is in East Brunswick still, in New Jersey. All right. All right, hey everybody. All right, we're over 100 people. I'm just gonna get started. Like I said, you snooze, you lose. All right. Most of you probably know who I am, but just really quick for those of you who don't, my name is Amy Berger. I am a low-carb and keto-oriented nutritionist and a writer. I wrote a couple of books of my own, but my most recent book, I think I have one here, is that I actually co-wrote the new book, End Your Carb Confusion, with Dr. Eric Westman, who I'm sure you know is one of the co-founders of Adapt Your Life. So what else? You can find me on my own YouTube channel at 2it Nutrition. That's also my handle on Twitter and where else? I guess I'm on Patreon, patreon.com/2it Nutrition. My website is 2itnutrition.com, but we've hit a little internet snag. And at the current time, you have to actually type in www.2itnutrition. If you just put 2itnutrition.com, you'll get that 404 error and you won't find my site. All right, getting into things. And I made notes so that I don't get too far astray. Why is the current approach to diet and health failing? And if you are watching this, you are probably somewhat accustomed to the low carb and keto world. You have probably already learned for yourself that the current approach to diet and health, or at least the conventional current approach, didn't work so well for you maybe. And that's why you found low carb and keto. And I'm always emphasizing that this way of eating, and when I say this way, I mean any type of carbohydrate restriction, whether it's just lowish carb or a fully strict ketogenic diet, any kind of carbohydrate restriction is very, very beneficial for improving a huge array of chronic health conditions, be they metabolic in origin, things like type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, hypertension, or even things, fascinating research going on now with regard to mental health, things like schizophrenia. I mean, Dr. Westman has published papers on that, bipolar disorder, anxiety, depression, emerging research on Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So just a migraine, skin issues, lots of things. I'm going to focus mainly on weight because even though keto and low carb is so good for all of those other things, I know most people, the main point of interest, or at least the main point of entry, is weight loss or fat loss. And when all this other good stuff happens, it's almost like a little bonus. Like there was even a published paper several years ago of twin sisters who started a ketogenic diet for the purpose of fat loss. And as the surprise, unexpected bonus, their chronic migraines went away. So I know many people start a low carb or keto diet for the purpose of losing weight. Oh, and I didn't know my rosacea would go away. I didn't know my heartburn would go away. I didn't know my joint pain would go away. So let's stick with the weight mainly. Where do I start? Eat less, move more. Who here's heard that? I know I can't see your hands, but raise your hand. And I'm going to pretend that I see a lot of hands I see a lot of virtual hands going up. Eat less, move more. It sounds correct. It sounds entirely logical, doesn't it? If you put less energy in and you're getting more out of it, there's going to be less left over. That just makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, it's not actually true. And it's because that is a perfectly logical way to approach a physics problem, a machine. The human body is a biological system. It's not a machine. The human body is governed by the laws of biology, not by the laws of physics. And your body is not a calculator. It's not like, okay, my metabolic rate is X. And therefore, if I eat X minus a few hundred calories every day, then like a mathematical formula, I'm going to lose Y pounds every few days or every week or month. If only it worked that way. Now, there's a couple of reasons why it doesn't work that way. The biggest being that the human body is it's a system, it's a network of intertwining, interconnected processes and I use the word system again, but not, you know how there's that saying with the spider web, if you touch a spider web, the whole thing kind of shakes a little bit, right? You can't just touch one little strand, the whole web starts to unravel or starts to move a little bit. That's how the human body is. You can't mess with one thing, with one hormone or one enzyme or one thing, and not have it ripple across multiple other things in the body. So there's a correction process, there's an adjustment when you eat less and move more for a very long time. Does it work in the short term? Yes. It's hard to do, but it works. Now, we all know it fails miserably in the long term precisely because of this very normal, very logical, biological adjustment or correction. And most of us know this, or you might be familiar with this as what they call the Biggest Loser phenomenon. From that show, The Biggest Loser, I never watched an episode of this show because I couldn't bring myself to do it, but I know what it was about. I kind of got the sense of what they did from hearing from other people that watched it. And a couple of years ago, there were several news articles that were published based on some research they had done on former contestants of The Biggest Loser. And almost to a one, almost every single one of them had regained all the weight back that they had lost on. And some of them had lost hundreds of pounds, right? They regained it all. Some of them ended up having gained even more. They ended up even heavier than they were before the show. And that has to do because you can't, well, there's Matthew Stanbridge, the keto dentist. Awesome. Hey, Matthew. I see so many friends here. Thank you for joining us. So there's that adjustment. Your body's not going to let you eat less and move more forever and ever because you're literally going to burn out and die. Think about, I know I said your body's not a machine, but think about what happens to a machine. Think about your car. Eat less, move more. And we say this in End Your Carb Confusion. Eat less, move more is like putting less gasoline in your tank and expecting your car to be able to drive a longer distance. It ain't gonna happen because at some point that car is gonna run out of gas. Now your body doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to run out of gas and go kaput. So what it does is it, as a protective mechanism, in order to have you not go kaput and stall out, it slows your metabolic rate. It slows your metabolic rate so that internally, through no fault of your own, you didn't want to do this, you didn't mean to do this, you are burning through less energy. Your body is turning off certain processes. Your body is running more efficiently. It sounds like it's less efficient. It's actually more efficient because you're using less energy to get some of the same processes done. But the bottom line is your metabolic rate is now in the tank. So now when you're not on The Biggest Loser anymore, or you're just a private citizen who was doing a ton of exercise, trying to keep your calories really low because That's what they told us to do, eat less, move more. Now you've ended up in the worst possible situation. Now your metabolic rate is lower, but because your metabolic rate is lower, you're tired, you're cold, you're fatigued, you're depressed. Try getting to the gym then. Try keeping up that level of working out. When you finally can't take it anymore and you give your body a rest and you stop working out so hard and you actually start eating, you actually start giving your body the food it's been crying out for all these months or years. But remember, now your metabolic rate is lower. That's why it's so easy and so fast to regain that weight and then some. So what a great way to not permanently lose body fat, eating less and moving more. So now moving on, I'm trying to follow the notes. Moving on, we cannot talk about fat loss without talking about hunger. And I'm stealing that from our friend, Dr. Tro Kalayjian. He's a keto-friendly doctor out of the New York City area. He really beats this drum. You cannot talk about fat loss without talking about hunger. Part of the reason I said eat less, move more is hard, because you have to ignore your hunger. You have to white knuckle your way through hunger. You have to have willpower to resist a very normal, very powerful biological urge to keep yourself alive, i.e., eating food. Now, what if some of the foods, now eat less, move more. Part of eating less, let's talk about calories, right? Calories is the measure of energy, that we get from food. Now, if we're going to eat less and take in less energy and expend more so that we can shrink the size of our bodies, it makes sense that we need to cut calories. And if we're going to do that, it makes, again, all of this is totally logical. It makes perfect sense to eat foods that are much, much lower in fat, because fat has over twice the calories per unit, per gram, compared to fat and protein, right? Compared to carbs and protein. Carbs and protein each have 4 calories per gram of that kind of food. And then fat has 9, so more than double. So if you're going to cut calories, it makes perfect sense to eat foods that are lower in fat and get more, the bulk, get the majority of your food from carbs and protein. And if you're eating what we call real foods, even though that's kind of a loaded term, if you're eating a whole unprocessed food, the protein foods tend to come along with fat, like a chicken leg with the skin, or a piece of salmon with the skin, or a piece of a pork loin, a nice fatty pork. So unless you're specifically choosing very lean meats, then if you really want to cut calories, if you really want to eat low fat, you're going to eat mostly carbs, beans, rice, potatoes, things that are basic, almost zero fat, skim milk, which, has a little bit of protein, or, like lean protein, canned tuna, skinless chicken breast, things like that. There are lean proteins, but you get my point. And then what if some of the very foods that are lowest in fat set us up to actually be hungrier? We're supposed to eat less, but it's really, really hard to eat less when the foods we're eating increase appetite, when they make us more hungry. In the moment, they satiate. In the moment, you eat your food and you're full and you push away from the table. And what happens? Like 90 minutes later, 2 hours later, maybe sooner, you're hungry again. And most of us have kind of learned about this now, but how come it never occurred to any of us? Or maybe it did. It never occurred to me, I'll be honest with you. Before I found the low-carb way of eating, it never occurred to me, I had a big bagel. I had my light margarine on it. I had my glass of juice. That was several hundred calories. Why am I hungry 2 hours later? Like, was that not enough? Should I have had two bagels? Like, this is completely unreasonable. So how even if eat less, move more was the holy grail of lasting fat loss, it's really difficult to do when the kinds of foods we think we're supposed to eat are stoking the fire of hunger. Um, so some of these foods, again, to borrow, I always say, when I was in college, I was a creative writing major, and one of my professors said, good writers borrow, great writers steal. I don't steal, I borrow and I give credit. So to borrow from another doctor that we love and respect, Dr. Ted Naiman out of the Seattle area, he says that certain foods have negative satiety. So you know how if you eat a nice piece of fatty protein, a nice ribeye steak, a nice fatty pork chop, a piece of chicken with the skin, you're good to go. Or maybe not just the protein. Maybe you have some roasted Brussels sprouts or some grilled asparagus, a nice low carb, moderate to high fat meal that just fills you up and keeps you full for a while. And there's these other foods that, again, they maybe fill you up in the moment, but not long after. You are hungrier than if you had not eaten anything at all. You would have been better off not eating anything than eating the donut or the bag of granola, right? Or I'm trying to think of other foods that are, high and refined, like, it's been so long since I eat these foods, I can't even think, like pastries, fat and refined carbs together tend to be the double whammy for this. Having eaten those foods, he calls it negative satiety because it's negative. It's not filling you up. It's making you more hungry. So let's see. You can't deny this hunger. If you're being made more hungry, I don't care how much willpower you have. I don't care how disciplined you are. Eventually, biology is going to win. It always does. It's always going to. You cannot beat biology. I'm sorry. And you just like do a little experiment. Hold your breath. Just hold it. Keep holding it. Keep on holding it. Like just keep on holding it. Keep holding it. Don't ever take a breath. Just keep. Eventually, you're going to have to take that breath. Why? Because your body needs air. It needs oxygen. And you can only fight that for so long. Like Navy SEALs and Special Forces people train themselves to be able to go insane lengths of time holding their breath, or in free diving, or like Tibetan monks can train themselves to do this. Even they eventually will reach a point where they have to take a breath because biology always wins. And so you can only fight that hunger for so long. And so, let's see, I won't want to, why were we, the reason we were advised to avoid some of those foods too, even apart from the calories, that's for fat loss specifically, but talking about health, I mean, the title of this was the approach to diet and health. Part of the reason we were told for so long to avoid, dietary cholesterol, things like egg yolks, things like butter, but also the saturated fat. So things like butter, cheese, red meat in particular, and not always just red meat, animal foods and animal fats in general. So even the fat on the chicken, the fat on the pork, it was because it was long thought that this stuff clogged your arteries. If you are still thinking that, I don't know what to tell you. It was never correct. Many scientific papers have since completely debunked and refuted that, but it was never true to begin with. The science, the science it was based on was very weak, poorly misinterpreted, very just bad science. And I can tell you, they all, they say it's not like pouring that hot bacon grease down your kitchen sink. It doesn't clog, like your pipes don't get clogged. And if your body temperature, core body temperature is what? About 98 degrees, give or take a little bit in either direction. If fat is turning to a solid inside your arteries, one of two things is happening. You are either dead, and you have been for a long time, or you need to go to the hospital immediately because something is very, very wrong, or you are a medical marvel and they need to study you. But fats are not going to turn solid at 98 degrees inside your arteries. So we were basically made afraid of these foods for no reason whatsoever. And now, even if, getting back to calories, even if this stuff is about calories, we have to find a way to regulate our weight without having to count calories. Unless many people like the data. Many people like to track their food and weigh and measure and put everything in the app and the spreadsheet. If that's you and you enjoy that, cool. Like, do what you want. We got to do what we want. Those of you who know who Dave Feldman is and his cholesterol experiments, he is the king of data tracking. I happen to know him personally. I think he is one of the sweetest humans on the planet. However, his approach and my approach could not be more different. I'm like the least tracking number data spreadsheet, but I have nothing but respect for him. If you like the data, like the data. But if you don't want to open your app and open your spreadsheet and track and have your food scale at every single meal and every single snack for the rest of your life, we have to find a way to be healthy and get to I hate this phrase, but a normal weight or an appropriate weight without having to track and weigh and measure and micromanage our way into kingdom come, right? And we shouldn't have to do all that anyway. Animals in the wild do not generally become obese. The only animals, the exception being those that are deliberately fattening for hibernation, right? And that's a biological hardwired programming. They are supposed to be becoming obese for that purpose. With those exceptions, the only animals that tend to become sick and get metabolic disease are the ones who live with us, our pet dogs and cats, and maybe, I don't know, our pet fish. I don't know if, like, if you overfeed a fish, maybe it gets a little heavy, a little fat fish swimming around. I don't know. The point is, animals in the wild eating their normal diets they self-regulate. Is there a way where humans can self-regulate? Can we get to a point where we don't have to do all the math and because we should be able to. Now, that being said, I'm just consulting my notes. That being said, I can absolutely understand there might be a place for the tracking for some people for some period of time because of the way the modern food supply has completely hijacked our appetite regulatory mechanisms, right? It is very hard. I mean, these foods are literally engineered to be addictive. They call it hyperpalatability. I mean, something's palatable. It tastes yummy. You want to eat more of it. If it's hyperpalatable, you really want to eat more of it. I mean, for example, think of a Dorito. It's salty, it's crispy, it's cheesy, it's fatty, even though it's not greasy. It has fat in it. It's starchy. It hits all the bells and whistles. Or kettle corn. It's sweet, it's salty, it's fatty, it's crunchy. there's a reason that nobody can have just one. You know, that slogan, bet you can't eat just one. Yeah, because we designed it to be that way. We pay an entire department of engineers in our food lab thousands of dollars a year to make it so you can't eat one. So in the modern world, I can see that there might be a place for tracking because we can't self-regulate. Animals in the wild can self-regulate because they don't have access to the hyperpalatable stuff we have access to. Now, that being said, isn't the beauty? So is there another way? Is there a way maybe where we could get back to some semblance of normalcy, some semblance of appropriate biological control, where we can still eat delicious food, wholesome, nutritious, good, health supporting food, and maybe lose any excess weight we might be carrying and restore health? Like, is there some kind of nutritional holy grail that can accomplish all this where we don't have to do the tracking and the weighing, the measuring, if we don't want to? I think there might be, and I think it's called keto / low carb / carb restriction, and I'll tell you why. Again, show of hands. I can't see your hands, but I'm going to pretend I see them. How many of you, upon going low carb or keto, maybe not the first day or two, but sometime relatively early on, found that you were not as hungry as you're used to being? That you were satisfied either on much less total food, like you could just have a less amount, less food on your plate, or you were hungry much less often. Like I gave that example before, you have the high carb breakfast and 2 hours later, you're starving. Like it's as if you hadn't eaten anything. You're hungrier than before. Now, what about when you had the bacon and eggs or the tuna and lettuce or whatever you had for breakfast that was low in carbs and, moderate to high in fat? Then maybe for the first time in your life, you were able to go hours between meals, and not just go hours without even thinking about the next meal. Or without thinking, what am I going to do? Oh my God, I forgot to bring my granola bar in my purse. What am I going to do if I need a snack? Because you didn't need the snack. It's very pleasant in North Carolina the last few days, so I opened my windows, but unfortunately you might hear some car honking. My apologies for that. When your hunger is controlled and when the sugar cravings go away, or at least are a little bit lessened, I'm not going to pretend it's magical and they go away like, completely for everybody. But when all of that hunger noise is quieter, it becomes, oh, hey, Mary Jones, it becomes much easier to control and to self-regulate the food that we eat. Because I wrote a blog post like 4 or 5 years ago on this, and I said something to the effect of, when you're in a workplace, like let's say an office where there's constant celebration, somebody's always retiring, or it's somebody's birthday, or a work anniversary, and there's constant cupcakes and fudge, or they ordered sandwiches or whatever, and you just kind of walk by and you don't even ever take it, you don't care. People will sometimes say, oh, you have such willpower. Oh, you're so disciplined. And it's not. That has nothing to do with it. You do not need willpower to resist a craving when the craving isn't there. You don't need willpower and discipline to white knuckle to stay away from something when you genuinely don't want it. And I say this as someone who, I wasn't born doing low carb. Like, I've had my share of bagels. I've had my share of cereal. Like, I know what it's like to eat sugar and starch. I know what it's like to not be able to resist. So for me now, to be able to walk down the cereal aisle, I don't know why I walk down there. I'm like, maybe there's something else I want there. Or like, I'm just taking a shortcut down to the meat at the, other end of the supermarket. I can just walk by and I'm like a horse with blinders. I don't even see it. Or if I do see it, it's like, wow, remember when I used to live on that stuff? It has nothing to do with willpower and discipline. You genuinely don't want that stuff anymore. Now, I'm not going to pretend that that happens for everybody magically overnight or ever, because it doesn't. It happens for most people. If it hasn't happened for you, you're not alone. Don't feel like a failure. Don't feel like why does everyone else, get the magic and I don't. I call it the magical keto fairy dust. If that hasn't been sprinkled on you yet, for some people it's just harder. There is such a thing as food addiction, and don't you dare let anyone tell you there isn't. There's sugar addiction, but there is also food addiction and compulsive overeating, which is not separate from sugar. That being said, if the magical keto pixie dust hasn't sprinkled itself on you, my advice, and I am going to wrap up soon, it's 8:00. My advice would be, do a little bit of analysis of your ketogenic diet, because you might be on a low carb diet, especially compared to what your diet was in the past. You are probably eating much lower carb, but for some people, they do not have the appetite suppression and the disappearance of sugar cravings and all that other stuff unless they are actually in ketosis. You do not have to be in ketosis to lose body fat or to, lower your blood sugar, lower your blood pressure, all this other good stuff that we know that lower carb eating does. But for some people, actually being in that ketogenic state is where the quote unquote magic happens. So if you are someone who's eating lower carb, but you like your keto cookies and your keto almond flour cake and the brownies and the keto granola, maybe hunker down and try to be really strict for 2 or 3 weeks and see what happens. Honestly, you might even notice a difference in 2 or 3 days. There's no guarantee, but hunker down and be strict. Do something like Dr. Westman's page 4 or the Atkins induction, like 20 total grams of carbs or fewer. You might find that it feels very, very different. So, all right, let's see. And that, I think some of that hunger suppression has to do with really making sure that blood sugar is low and steady, the insulin is low and steady. And it might also have to do, for the people that respond specifically to a good deep ketogenic state, we do know that ketones readily cross that good old blood-brain barrier, and they might have signaling effects in the brain. And the brain is, when we think about hunger and satiety, of course, we think about our stomach, we think about the intestines. So much of that signaling is crosstalk with the brain. So, okay, I'm going to start wrapping up. I'm going to start wrapping up. Maybe I'll just look through questions real quick. I don't want to go too long. No, I'll just say thank you, everybody, for being here. Join us for upcoming lives. I think we're going to do a live the next 2 or 3 Mondays, all on these same channels. So join us for that. Yeah, not really. Hank Karoon says keto granola. Yeah, if it's grain free, people make keto granola out of just nuts and seeds and erythritol or some kind of sugar-free maple syrup. It can be done. Whether or not it's something that's going to help you get to your goals is questionable. But can you make a keto granola? Yeah. All right, so check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com. We have some really cool stuff coming your way, some courses if you need some common sense, simple thinking about keto and fat loss and how to do this without losing your mind and how to do it without all the micromanaging. Adaptyourlifeacademy.com. Remember, book from myself and Dr. Westman, End Your Carb Confusion. This is about keto, but it's also for those of you who are ready to maybe move on from keto and increase your carbs a little bit and see, can you increase your carbs a little bit and still maintain a state of health and a body shape and size that you're happy with. It's all in End Your Carb Confusion. And that's it. Thank you so much for sharing your Monday evening with me, and I will see you next time. Good night, everybody.